going on, guys? This is my 99 Toyota 4Runner, and right now it doesn't have a rear bumper, but in today's video we're gonna fix that. I've had this 4Runner for about 6 years now, and I have been dying to make a rear bumper for it. Now I finally have some of the skills and tools to do this. A bumper that I really like is this CBI off-road bumper design. Unfortunately, I don't have a tube bender or a tube notcher or any of the skills to use either of those tools. So what we're doing is something similar, but out of mostly square and rectangular tubing. All right, so I'm sure this looks very odd to you guys. I promise it's gonna work out, I swear. This is what I have come up with for a frame mount. What my general idea is for a bumper is gonna be a 3x4 tube suspended up above a 2x2 tube. And that's gonna obviously run the length of the back of the 4Runner. Looks weird right now. I believe it's gonna work out. I'll do my best. Originally, I was gonna have this bottom piece of 1/4" steel tie all the way through my bottom piece of square tubing. I think I'm gonna lop this off because I think it's just gonna complicate the whole building process of this bumper. If I decide to add this on later as kind of a protection little skid piece if we're going over rocks and whatnot, I might, but I think I'm gonna cut this off. Here is my frame mount. I am gonna add a couple more mounting holes on the side and not just have them on the bottom. Now I gotta just take this pile of steel and do the exact same thing. It's been a few days since I've been able to get out here and film and, you know, actually spend a decent amount of time out here. But off camera, I did fully weld these frame mounts up and got all the holes drilled for mounting. I didn't want to bore you guys with just a bunch of sparks and hole drilling, so didn't bother filming any of that. And now we're going to get on to the fun part, which will be putting this bumper together and actually, you know, designing the bumper. So I want to cut this on a bit of an angle for a look, and then we're going to have some plate running at the same angle going up towards the rear fender. 2x2 bar that's going to go underneath is also going to come up at an angle and meet this somewhere around here. So I'm just going to use my speed square here and just kind of figure out what kind of an angle I want to cut this on. I'm also going to cut this piece here on an angle so that it meets up with the fender over there, the fender flare. That is about 10 degrees. And then for this, I think I want to go somewhere maybe 25 to 30 degrees. Yeah, 30 looks good. Alright, so I got my side pieces tacked in place, one on each side. Next thing is my hitch tube into here. But my gap here is 2 inches, the size of the hitch is 2.5, so I have to kind of recess it into here. So I gotta cut that out and the hitch will be in place, keep on plugging away. Now that I've got this hitch tube welded to this part of the bumper, I think it's time to get it on the truck. All right, I'm not gonna lie, for the first time, maybe ever, I'm a little bit impressed with myself. I think this looks so good. Lines up nicely with the fender flare. I was worried the back section kind of looks a little bit too bulky, but now just getting everything together, I think it flows really nicely. I think it looks really good. And soon we will have a bumper. Alright, so these wings out here I actually made 1/8 inch, but this guy here I wanted to make him 3/16 because I eventually plan on putting a swing out on this thing. Probably gonna do like a double shear style swing out mounted on this face. So I wanted this to be a little more stout than the rest of this, just because I know I'm gonna probably add a lot of weight with that swing out. Alright, so the last thing we have left as far as the exterior of this bumper goes is I want to weld some shackle mounts onto here that tie into this, which goes into the frame mount. I'll show you guys on my Tacoma. I have some big 1-inch guys, and quite honestly, these are pretty light trucks, and I think that's a little bit overkill. So this here is some 3/8 flat bar, 3/8 by 3 inches wide. So I'm gonna make a couple of shackle mounts out of this stuff, and that'll be plenty strong. Alright, So my two hooks, they are on. There's one and there is number two. Next thing I've got to do is I've got to run some sort of brace from this hitch tube over to this plate here. Same thing on that side. And then a similar thing from this plate here out to the inside of these wings here on each side. Okay, so if I do want to run this brace in between the frame rail and the outer wing, it does unfortunately mean I have to cut back my exhaust a little bit so that I can take this bumper on and off if I ever need to paint it. Obviously I'm going to take it off to fully weld it up, so I am going to have to cut this exhaust back probably to about here, and if I find it rattles too much or vibrates too much, I will add another exhaust hanger in here somewhere. But for now, I'm gonna have to chop it all out so we can do this bumper. Now this thing is fully braced up. I thought that was really important because I'm going to be taking this thing off so I can fully weld it up, and I want as little shifting and warping as possible. So bracing this thing on the truck should kind of ensure that everything stays pretty true to where it's at right now. Obviously I'm going to weld it pretty slow and try and keep things cool so I get as little warping as possible, but I think this stuff all should really help that stay together, and obviously it strengthens this a ton, keeps the wings from rattling. They were pretty strong to begin with, but this should really help all of those issues. Well guys, I unfortunately started this project just a few days before heading out on holidays. I was really hoping I'd be able to get it finished, but unfortunately I am not. But that's okay. When I come back, we're going to take this thing off the truck, fully weld it up, paint it, and then we'll be done. I'm going to go on holidays. You guys will do some time traveling. When I come back, we will pull this bumper off the truck, fully weld it, paint it all up, and then we'll see the finished product. All right, I'm back. It was a nice 2 weeks, but it's good to be back to get started on this thing. Let's get this bumper off and start welding. All right, we have a lot of welding and grinding to do. I'm gonna get started, and I'm gonna try and go slow and keep everything cool, kind of jump around a little bit over here, a little bit over here, a little bit in the middle, and just try and keep it as cool as possible so that we end up with as little warping as possible, because I need this thing to fit exactly like it did to make everything line up perfectly with the truck. right, so one thing I kind of completely forgot about was some trailer hooks for this hitch. So I cut out a couple of little plates here that they're just gonna fit in right there. Got one on that side, one on that side. I'm gonna fit those in. It's 3/16 and should be perfectly strong for a couple of hooks there for the trailer. If I ever do any towing, I will probably be using the Tacoma and not the 4Runner. The 4Runner is more my off-road rig, but I want to be prepared in case there's ever a situation which I need to tow. So put these hooks in. Obviously already have the hitch tube in. So yeah, I'm gonna get these welded in. And just my luck, the nicest welds on this whole project are gonna be completely hidden. So that's great. And if you're watching this thinking, those are your nicest welds? Yeah, they are, and I don't want to talk about it. I like to blame the flux core welder over there, but honestly, it's all probably me. Any of you internet welding companies want to send me a welder that's not flux core, I could use one. Okay, so I'm gonna do my best to strip off all the mill scale with this stripping disc here on the angle grinder. Once I've got that done, I'm gonna move over to the sander and sand it all down with about 180 grit, and then should be good to go for paint. To scrounge up all the cans I had laying around to get this thing fully coated, but we're good to go. As for paint, I couldn't find the Toyota paint match locally, so what I found was a GM light drift sand metallic paint. I just took a piece of my old bumper and brought it in and just matched it up with the cap here. And I'll show you, it's pretty close. It's not perfect, but pretty close. I don't need perfect, I just need pretty close. So that's what we're gonna go with. I'm gonna get this sprayed out and then we can get ready to throw it on the truck. Well, I bought 2 cans, and I was really hoping I'd maybe get 3 coats on this. 1 can got me a very thin light coat. So here goes can number 2. Mainly focused on getting a second coat on the outer part of the bumper. So that's unfortunate, but we make do with what we got. So this is what we got. Alright, well I got two pretty decent coats on the outside of the bumper, the main part that you can see. The rest of it has primer, and I managed to get some paint onto there, but I can touch that up later. The parts that I can't spray while it's on the truck that I was kind of most concerned about. The other parts underneath, I can spray that after and not have to worry really about overspray or anything, but looks pretty good. I'm gonna let this set up overnight, and I think tomorrow we'll get this thing on. Alright guys, paint is good to go on this thing. There's one more thing that I want to do on this before I get it put on the truck, and I would have done this before I painted it but completely forgot. I want a way to quickly add and remove mud flaps if I need to, because I don't want this thing to be a police magnet. So I'm gonna get some mud flaps on here just so I can be able to have the option to throw mud flaps on there if I want to. So what I'm gonna do is gonna add a couple of these Rivnuts to this front edge over here, right behind the rear fender, and then that issue will be solved. This tool is not one that I get to use that often. It's one of those tools that is just so nice to have when you need it. And I will link this tool in the description below for any of you that want to check this out, because it is just such a nice thing to have, and you never know when you're going to need it. Now we have a mud flap. Alright, so we're all mounted up. There was definitely some warpage. It was a little tight getting these mounting brackets onto the frame. And the other thing that was tight was these wings here. They were in a little bit, so what I had to do was get a jack between the frame and wing here and just kind of jack it out a little bit so that this lined up a little bit better and there was no contact in between here. Got it on the other side. I've got the jack in there now, just kind of pressing that outwards a little bit. I'll loosen it off now and see how much that helped, because this side there was definitely a lot of contact. That's a lot better, because there was definitely contact in there before and now there is not. Alright guys, here is the final product. I'm going to be real with you guys. It has been a few weeks since I actually finished building this thing. So I wanted to test it out for a few weeks just to see if I had any critiques, see how the paint held up, and just to let you guys know if there's anything that I would change about it. And to be honest, not a whole lot. I took it on a pretty serious off-road trip and it gave me quite a bit of clearance. I got one little nick under here, but that is totally to be expected. This is definitely the kind of thing I'm going to be repainting every, couple years. My biggest complaint, and I think really the only one, is the color. It's pretty darn close, but I kind of realized afterwards that if my color was going to be off, I would want it to be off more in the direction of gray rather than gold. But unfortunately, it's a little too gold for my liking. Once again, not the biggest deal. I'll probably repaint this thing in a year anyways, and repaint it every few years after that. But yeah, the fenders clearly are a slightly more gray, and the bumper itself is a little more gold. Not the biggest deal, but I do think, it looks really good. I took some measurements using my stock 4Runner and comparing it to this one. From the bottom of the hatch to the bottom of this 2x2 is about 7¼ inches. And this one here is a lot closer to 9, about 8½, 9 inches. And sticking out the back, it is about 7¼ while this one is about 4½ or 4¼ so gets you a significantly better departure angle, and on top of that, this one is lifted and the other one isn't, so that's even better for the departure angle. So during the building process, I was a little concerned that this thing might be a little bit too bulky. And yeah, if I was to do this thing again, I probably would make it a little more low profile, but it really is quite nice the way it is. I think I like this the way it is. Maybe I would have done this 2x3 instead of 3x4, and it would have been amazing to have a round tube come down across the bottom, like a 1.5 maybe round tube come across the bottom. But it is what it is. I don't have a tube bender, and I'm a broke guy who loves his Toyotas. So this is kind of the design I've always had in mind for this thing, and I've been thinking about this one for a long time. And I really like the way it turned out. I think my favorite part is, the wings on the side, and I think that looks really clean, and I don't have a whole lot of changes that I would make with the current tools I have and everything like that. The only change really I would make is getting the better paint color, but that's a pretty minimal change. So head to the comments and let me know what you guys like about it and what you guys hate about it. And if you guys like this kind of content, I fully plan on building a swing out like the one I have on my Tacoma. I have a video on that if you guys want to check that out. But for the 4Runner, it's gonna be a little more elaborate. I'm gonna have obviously the carrier for the spare tire. Maybe I'm gonna add something for a propane tank or a jerry can or water cans, whatever the case may be. And definitely some kind of drop down table for cooking while I'm out camping. If you guys are interested in that type of content, be sure to subscribe. I want to thank you guys again for watching. This was a super fun project, and I'm glad it turned out as good as it did. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.